I'm a 34-year-old woman, and my husband, Daniel, is 36. We've been together for over a decade, and for most of that time, we've been trying to have a child. It's been an exhausting, heartbreaking journey, IVF cycles that failed, endless doctor visits, thousands of dollars spent with nothing to show for it but disappointment. Eventually, we had to accept that biological children just weren't in the cards for us. It was hard, but we found peace in the idea of fostering or adopting when we were ready. Not everyone in our lives has been supportive, though. Daniel's younger sister, Laura 29F, has made my infertility the punchline of every joke for years. She has 3 kids, 6, 4, and 2 years old, and never misses a chance to brag about how fertile she is. She used to make cruel comments at family gatherings, things like, "I just look at my husband and get pregnant," or "maybe you should just relax. Stress is probably why it's not happening for you." And the worst one, "Maybe it's a sign you're not meant to be a mom." It was unbearable. No one in the family ever called her out for it, either. I tried to ignore her, but after our last failed IVF attempt, I had to step back from family events entirely. It was too much. Daniel understood, and we agreed to limit contact with her. His parents, though, tried to keep the peace. They'd say things like, "She doesn't mean it," or "She's just immature," but that excuse wore thin after years of the same behavior. Laura's husband, Mark 32M, is useless. He barely helps with the kids, constantly complains about money, and leaves Laura to handle everything on her own. From what I heard through the family grapevine, their relationship is a mess. She's always stressed, always struggling, but somehow she still finds time to act smug about being a mother. A few weeks ago, I found out through Daniel's mom that Laura was pregnant again. She wasn't happy about it this time, though. She was overwhelmed, barely getting by with the 3 she already had, and apparently Mark wasn't thrilled about another baby either. Maybe this is karma, I remember thinking. Maybe she finally gets how hard it is. But I didn't dwell on it too much. It wasn't my problem. Then, completely out of the blue, Laura called me late one night. I hadn't spoken to her directly in months, and I almost didn't answer. When I did, her voice was shaky, like she'd been crying. She didn't even bother with small talk. "I want you to take the baby." At first, I didn't even process what she was saying. I asked her to repeat herself. "I want you to adopt the baby when it's born." I was stunned. This was the same woman who had mocked me relentlessly for not being able to have children. Now she was just handing one over? Something didn't add up. I stayed calm and asked why. Laura broke down. She said she couldn't do it again. She was exhausted, financially screwed, and completely alone in raising her kids. She said Mark wasn't helping and that she was at her breaking point. I didn't know what to say. A part of me felt bad for her, but I couldn't ignore the years of cruelty. And more than that, something about this felt off. Why me? She had never once offered us a chance to take in one of her kids before, even when she was struggling. And now, out of nowhere, she was just giving me her baby? I told her I'd have to talk to Daniel first and ended the call. But the whole thing left a bad taste in my mouth. I wasn't sure what to think. Was this genuine? Was she actually willing to do this? Or was there something else she wasn't telling me? When Daniel got home, I told him everything. He didn't look surprised. He sighed and said, "She's up to something." And honestly, I agreed. You said. The moment Daniel heard what Laura had said, he didn't hesitate. He pulled out his phone and called his mom. She answered almost immediately. After a bit of casual small talk, Daniel asked about Laura, specifically about her financial situation. There was a pause before his mom sighed. Laura had been struggling. Apparently, she'd maxed out multiple credit cards and had started missing payments. Mark wasn't helping financially either, he never had. Between daycare costs, rent, and just trying to keep food on the table for 3 kids, she was barely scraping by. That explained a lot. But it still didn't make sense why she'd suddenly offer me her unborn child. After hanging up, Daniel and I sat in silence for a few moments, piecing it all together. The more we thought about it, the clearer it became. Laura wasn't trying to do something selfless. She was desperate, and people do desperate things when they need money. To test the waters, I sent her a text. I kept it light, just asking if she was absolutely sure about her decision and whether Mark was on board. Her response came quickly. She completely avoided mentioning Mark. Instead, she went on about how she'd been thinking a lot and that I deserved to be a mother. She said she wanted to do something good for me, that this was her way of making things right after everything that had happened between us. None of it sounded genuine. If anything, it felt like she was trying to manipulate me into feeling grateful. Daniel read over my shoulder and shook his head. Mark doesn't know. That much was obvious. The next day, I met up with a mutual acquaintance, someone who had known Laura for years and was still in contact with her. We chatted for a bit, and eventually I casually brought up Laura's pregnancy. I didn't mention the adoption offer. I just asked how she was doing. That's when she dropped the bomb. Laura had been talking about charging for the adoption. She had apparently mentioned to a few people that she was thinking of naming a price before handing the baby over. I felt my stomach turn. This wasn't a struggling mother trying to do what was best for her child. This was a transaction, a deal. She wasn't giving me her baby, she was selling it. I didn't wait. The second I got home, I called Laura. She picked up, and before she could say anything, I asked her directly. Was she expecting money for this? She didn't deny it. She tried to twist it, saying that of course I would help her out in return, that it was only fair she got something to support her other kids. She made it sound like I owed her. I told her, very clearly, that what she was suggesting was illegal. She got defensive fast, raising her voice, calling me ungrateful. She started ranting about how I couldn't even appreciate the gift she was offering, how any other woman in my position would be jumping at the chance. I hung up. The messages started rolling in almost immediately. Long, angry paragraphs. How I was selfish. How I should be thanking her for even considering me. How I had no idea how hard her life was, and how all she was asking for was some support in return. Daniel took my phone and blocked her. For the rest of the night, I felt sick. Not just at what she had done, but at the fact that I had even entertained the idea for a second. That I had let myself believe, for a brief moment, that maybe she had changed. Daniel and I sat down to talk about our next steps. There was no question, we needed to report this. But how? and to who. We couldn't ignore what Laura was trying to do. We couldn't just pretend it hadn't happened. Because if she was willing to sell this baby, what else was going on in her home? I grabbed my laptop and started looking up lawyers. It was time to get some real advice. Because something wasn't right, and we needed to do something about it. The morning after I blocked Laura's number, I called a family lawyer. I kept it vague at first, just asking hypothetically what would happen if someone was trying to trade a baby for money. The lawyer didn't even hesitate. This wasn't just unethical, it was illegal. In some cases, it even fell under human trafficking laws. That was all I needed to hear. Daniel and I sat down that night and went over everything again. There was no doubt anymore. Laura wasn't just desperate, she was dangerous. If she was willing to sell her baby, what else was going on behind closed doors? I hesitated for a second. Reporting family to CPS wasn't something I ever thought I'd have to do, but I reminded myself who we were dealing with. I made the call. I reported Laura anonymously. I told them everything, that she had offered me her unborn baby, that she had avoided mentioning Mark, and that we had reason to believe she was expecting payment in return. I also mentioned her financial situation and the fact that she was already struggling with 3 kids. CPS took it seriously. They asked if I had any proof. I sent them screenshots of Laura's messages, the ones where she made it clear she expected help in return for the adoption. After that, all we could do was wait. 3 days later, Daniel's mom called. She was frantic. CPS had shown up at Laura's house. Apparently, Laura lost it when they knocked on her door. She started screaming before they even asked her a single question, demanding to know who reported her. She immediately accused me. In front of everyone, Mark, the kids, and the CPS workers, she called me a backstabbing bitch. She claimed it was just a joke, that she was never actually planning to sell the baby, and that I had twisted the situation out of jealousy. None of it mattered. CPS wasn't just there for the unborn baby anymore. They were there to investigate everything. That's when Mark finally found out the full story. Up until that point, he had no idea Laura had offered me the baby. She had completely kept him in the dark. When he heard the CPS worker mention that she had been asking for money in return, he flipped. Daniel's mom was crying as she told us everything. Mark had snapped at Laura, asking what the hell she was thinking. She just kept doubling down, saying it wasn't a big deal, that everyone does it under the table. CPS wasn't buying it. They started asking questions about her other kids, about the home environment, about whether she had ever neglected them. That was when things really fell apart. CPS didn't leave that day. They took statements from everyone, neighbors, teachers, even the kids themselves. And what they found, it wasn't good. Apparently, Laura's oldest child had a lot to say. She told them that her mom would leave them alone for hours at a time, that sometimes there wasn't enough food in the house, that she had to take care of her younger siblings because mommy is too tired. CPS flagged Laura for neglect on the spot. When Daniel's mom told us all of this, I didn't even know what to say. This wasn't just about the baby anymore. Laura wasn't just overwhelmed, she was an unfit parent. And now, CPS was watching her closely. For the first time in years, Laura wasn't in control of the situation. And she was about to learn what it felt like when people stopped looking the other way. The day after CPS showed up at Laura's house, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. At first, I ignored it. But the notifications kept coming: texts, missed calls, even messages from numbers I didn't recognize. Daniel's phone started lighting up too. Then his mother called. Laura had lost it. She was going around telling everyone that I had reported her out of jealousy, that I couldn't have kids, so I wanted to take hers. She was playing the victim, saying I had set her up and that CPS was only involved because of my lies. Some family members bought it. Daniel's mom was in tears. Laura had threatened to cut the entire family off if they didn't take her side. She was done with all of them unless they turned against me. I didn't even flinch. Daniel stepped in before his mom could say another word. He told her exactly what Laura had been doing, how she had tried to sell her baby, how she had lied to Mark, how CPS wasn't there because of me, but because Laura was a terrible mother. Silence on the other end. Then she whispered, I didn't know. No one ever did. Because no one ever wanted to see it. Daniel hung up. Meanwhile, my phone kept going off. Messages from cousins, distant relatives, even old family friends. Some were demanding to know why I had turned on family. Others were just spreading what Laura was saying, that I had ruined her life out of spite. I ignored them. Then I got a message from one of Daniel's cousins. Mark left. Apparently, after CPS showed up, something clicked for him. He packed up his things and took the kids to his mother's house. He didn't even wait. He just grabbed them and left. It was the first good news I'd heard all day. Laura, on the other hand, was spiraling. She went straight to social media, posting paragraphs about betrayal, how she had been stabbed in the back by her own family. I didn't even have to look at the comments to know people were eating it up. Then I saw it. One post, no names mentioned, but it was obvious who she was talking about. Some people are so miserable they'd rather steal someone else's kids than accept that they'll never have their own. She wasn't even trying to be subtle. Daniel grabbed my phone and blocked her. That night, my lawyer called. CPS had followed up. Laura had been officially flagged for child neglect, and now there was a full investigation into her home life. She found out almost immediately, and instead of doing anything to fix the situation, she doubled down. She told everyone I had made false claims to take her kids, that CPS had no real reason to be involved, that this was just my way of punishing her. Daniel's extended family was split. Some people were finally waking up, realizing maybe Laura wasn't just some struggling mom. Maybe there was actual neglect happening. But others still believed her sob story. Then the threat started. Anonymous texts, calls from blocked numbers, stuff like you should watch your back and you destroyed a family. Hope you're happy. I didn't even have to guess who was behind it. Daniel didn't hesitate this time. He told me we were going no contact. not just with Laura, but with anyone enabling her. He picked up his phone and started blocking numbers. One by one, we cut them all off. By the end of the night, my phone was finally silent. Laura had lost control of the narrative. And for the first time, she was the one facing the consequences. A few weeks passed. Things had quieted down, at least on our end. The texts had stopped. The calls had died out. Laura had been completely cut off. And for the first time in years, Daniel and I felt like we had some peace. Then Mark called. I almost didn't pick up. But something told me I needed to. He got straight to the point. Over the course of several weeks, CPS continued their investigation. What started as a financial concern escalated when teachers and neighbors provided troubling reports. The oldest child finally opened up, detailing how they often had to take care of their siblings while their mother was gone for hours. The picture that emerged wasn't just one of stress, it was long-term neglect. Mark admitted he had looked the other way. He had been struggling with his own problems, debt, stress, working long hours just to keep the lights on. He thought Laura was just overwhelmed. He didn't realize how bad it had actually gotten. Mark hesitated before admitting something he had never shared before, something he had convinced himself wasn't as bad as it truly was. Years ago, Laura had tried to leave their youngest child with his mother indefinitely, claiming she just needed a break. Mark had brushed it off as stress at the time, but now, he realized it was a pattern he had ignored for too long. A couple of years ago, when their youngest was just a baby, Laura had tried to abandon him. She left him with Mark's mother for what was supposed to be a weekend visit, then never came back. Mark's mother had to call and demand she take the baby home. Even then, Laura had dragged her feet, claiming she couldn't handle it anymore. He had ignored the warning signs. But now, after hearing the things CPS had uncovered, after seeing the way Laura completely spiraled, after realizing she had tried to sell the baby she was pregnant with, he wasn't ignoring it anymore. He was done. He was filing for full custody. He was divorcing her. Hearing those words should have shocked me, but they didn't. It was the only logical next step. I asked him what he needed. He told me CPS was still investigating, but the way things were looking, Laura wasn't going to come out of this clean. If she didn't turn things around fast, she wouldn't just lose custody, she'd lose everything. And she knew it. She was unraveling, lashing out at everyone, turning on anyone who didn't support her version of events. She was furious that Mark had left with the kids. She was furious that CPS wasn't backing off. And most of all, she was furious that I had started it all. I already knew she blamed me. But now, she was making it loud and clear. She went back to social media, this time claiming she was being framed, that her entire family had turned against her, that her own husband had stolen her children from her because I had manipulated him into it. The comments under her posts weren't what she expected. People started asking real questions. Why would CPS be involved if there was no proof? Why would her husband leave with the kids if she was such a great mom? And most damning of all, why would her own brother and sister-in-law report her if she had done nothing wrong? Her usual supporters started disappearing. Her posts got more desperate. Then, Daniel's parents reached out, clearly torn. At first, they tried to downplay Laura's actions, saying she was just struggling. But as more undeniable proof came in, from CPS reports to Mark's testimony, they had to face the truth. They weren't just disappointed, they were devastated by how far she had fallen. They had spent years excusing Laura's behavior, making excuses for her, trying to smooth things over. But they couldn't deny it anymore. CPS had confirmed the neglect. Mark had left with the kids, and now there was a real possibility she would never get them back. They wanted to know if she could fix this. CPS had already given her the conditions, parenting classes, home inspections, supervised visits. She wasn't doing any of it. She was too busy trying to control the narrative, trying to play the victim, trying to convince everyone that she was being targeted. And CPS didn't care about her sob story. She had a limited window to prove she could be a fit parent. If she didn't take it, they would make it official. She would lose her rights. For good. And at the rate things were going, it was clear she was not going to change. Daniel and I had done what we could. We had exposed the truth. We had protected the kids. But something told me this wasn't over yet. Laura had already shown how far she was willing to go. And now that she was losing everything, I had a feeling she was about to do something worse. A week passed with no word from Laura. No messages. No calls. No new social media rants. For the first time in months, it felt like things were finally settling down. CPS was still handling their investigation, Mark was moving forward with the custody case, and the family drama was starting to die out. Then, late one evening, there was a loud bang on the front door. It wasn't a knock. It was pounding. Daniel and I froze. Then the shouting started. Laura. Her voice was hoarse, frantic, slurring her words together, screaming about how I had stolen her family, that I had ruined her life, that she knew I was behind everything. I grabbed my phone and started recording. Daniel stepped toward the door, but I held up a hand. Laura wasn't just angry, she was unhinged. The pounding got louder. She was trying to force the door open. Daniel grabbed his phone and called the police while I stood in front of the locked door, listening as Laura kept ranting. She wasn't just mad about CPS. She was mad that I had turned the family against her, that Mark had taken the kids, that she was the one being punished when all she had tried to do was gift me a baby. She actually said that she had been doing me a favor, that I should have been grateful. I snapped. I stepped right up to the door and told her the truth, that she had never wanted to be a mother, that she had treated her children like burdens, that she had seen them as nothing more than bargaining chips, and that she deserved everything that was happening to her. The house went silent for half a second. Then Laura lunged at the door. The handle rattled violently. Then, she tried to shove it open with her shoulder. I didn't wait to see what she would do next. I swung the door open just enough to shove her back before she could force her way inside. She stumbled, eyes wide, like she couldn't believe I had actually pushed her away. Then she lost it completely, screaming at me, calling me every name in the book. Daniel shouted that the cops were on their way. That was the only thing that made her stop. For a split second, she hesitated. Then she bolted. But she didn't get far. 2 police cars pulled up before she even made it down the driveway. The moment the officers stepped out, Laura switched tactics. She burst into tears, claiming she had only come to talk things out and that I had escalated the situation. But when Daniel played the recording, her story crumbled. The officers issued a stern warning and ordered her to leave. When she refused and continued yelling, they took her into custody for trespassing and disorderly conduct. Trespassing, disorderly conduct, attempted forced entry. The moment the cops drove away, I turned to Daniel. It was over. The next day, I got a call from CPS. Laura's arrest was the final nail in the coffin. She had officially lost all parental rights. Mark was granted full custody. No visitation, no appeals, no loopholes. She was done. And she knew it. Because the moment she got out of jail, she went straight back to social media. This time, it was all about me. How I had set her up. How I had manipulated everyone into believing she was a bad mother. How I had stolen her kids. It didn't work. The family wasn't buying it anymore. No one defended her. No one believed her. Even Daniel's parents, who had spent years making excuses for her, finally accepted the truth. Laura had done this to herself. A few days later, I got another string of texts, this time, threatening ones. I didn't even hesitate. I went straight to a lawyer. A restraining order was filed that week. Laura was completely cut off. After that, she spiraled even harder. She lost her apartment. She lost her apartment. She lost the rest of her social circle. The last I heard, she was couch surfing with an old friend, someone who had no idea what she had done. Then, one day, she was gone. Vanished. No one knew where she went. No one cared. Mark moved forward with his life. The kids started adjusting. And Daniel and I, for the first time in years, we had peace. Because Laura was finally out of our lives. For good. A few weeks passed. No calls. No texts. No sudden visits. It almost felt like Laura had finally accepted reality and disappeared for good. Weeks later, after multiple ignored CPS recommendations and a court order for parenting evaluations, Laura resurfaced. And instead of complying, she filed an appeal, claiming the system had been rigged against her. Daniel opened it first, reading through the pages in silence. When he handed them to me, I could barely believe what I was looking at. Somehow, she had found a lawyer willing to take her case. A lawyer who was actually arguing that Laura had been set up. The claims were ridiculous. She accused Mark of manipulating the system to take her kids away, said CPS had been tricked into thinking she was unfit. Even worse, she claimed that I had been obsessed with taking her baby and had framed her out of jealousy. She was still trying to twist the truth. Daniel wasted no time. He called Mark, who was already one step ahead. Mark's lawyer had been preparing for this. He had everything. CPS's reports, documented neglect, the police report from Laura's arrest, and most importantly, her own messages where she tried to sell her unborn baby. The court wasn't just going to take her word for it. They ordered Laura to take parenting classes and undergo a psychological evaluation if she wanted even the chance at visitation. She refused. Instead, she went right back to social media, spinning her usual sob story. She claimed that the system was against her, that the courts were corrupt, that Mark and I had plotted against her from the start. But it wasn't working anymore. The same people who once defended her weren't engaging. Because the truth was obvious now. Mark's kids were doing better without her, and the family could see it. The kids were healthier, happier. No more stress, no more walking on eggshells around their mother's moods. Laura, on the other hand, was spiraling. She started harassing Mark's family, showing up at their house, banging on the doors, demanding to see her kids. It got so bad that Mark had to file a restraining order. Now, Laura wasn't just fighting for custody, she was racking up more and more legal trouble. Then, in a last-ditch effort, she tried to turn CPS against Mark. She made an anonymous report, claiming Mark was an unfit father. CPS launched a formal investigation, interviewing Mark, his family, and even the kids' teachers. But after weeks of reviewing evidence, including Laura's own history of neglect, the case was dismissed as unfounded. And just like that, her last move had backfired. The judge denied her any custody. No rights. No say. She would only be allowed supervised visits, and only if she completed the parenting classes and psychological evaluation. She refused. Because in Laura's mind, she was still the victim. And now, she had lost everything. Laura's downfall wasn't just a slow decline, it was a complete collapse. With no custody, no allies, and a growing sense of helplessness, Laura scrambled to regain some control. She tried borrowing money from old friends, begged distant relatives to intervene, and even reached out to Mark with emotional pleas. But when none of it worked, her unstable behavior worsened, and soon, she started missing work. Eventually, her boss let her go. Word got around that she had been missing shifts, not calling in, just vanishing for days at a time. Eventually, her boss got tired of the excuses and let her go. The official reason was attendance issues, but everyone knew it was more than that. Then, she lost her apartment. She had already been struggling with rent before all of this. But now, without Mark's income or financial support from family, she couldn't keep up. She tried to get an extension, begged her landlord for more time, but it didn't matter. She was evicted within weeks. With nowhere to go, she started couch surfing. She bounced between friends, acquaintances, anyone who still pitied her enough to give her a place to sleep. But even that didn't last long, because Laura hadn't changed. She wasn't humbled by what happened. She wasn't reflecting on her mistakes. She was doubling down. Online, she was completely unhinged. Every day, a new post, a new rant, blaming me, blaming Mark, blaming Daniel, even blaming her own parents for turning their backs on her. Then, she made a mistake. One of her old friends, someone who had been sticking by her side through everything, finally had enough. They leaked screenshots, messages where Laura admitted she had planned to sell the baby, not just asking for money, negotiating a price. The moment those screenshots hit the family group chats, the last of her supporters vanished. Even the relatives who had defended her in the beginning finally saw the truth. She wasn't some struggling mother who had been wronged. She was a manipulator. Daniel and I blocked her accounts completely, changed our numbers, cut off anyone who tried to pass her messages along. She tried reaching out to his parents again, begging for money, saying she needed help getting back on her feet. This time they refused. Laura had burned every bridge. With no one left to lean on, she got desperate. A distant cousin reached out to me, warning that Laura had been begging for money under the guise of starting over. She was telling people she was homeless, that she had been betrayed, that she just needed a little help to get back on her feet. But no one believed her anymore. Meanwhile, Mark was moving forward. He was settling into life as a single father. The kids were thriving, and for the first time in years, he was actually happy. Then, he started dating again. Laura found out. That's when the next meltdown started. She tried to make a scene, calling him, messaging him, even showing up at places he was rumored to be. It didn't work. Mark had moved on, and Laura, she had nothing left. She tried to hold on to the one last bit of control she had, her supervised visits. But slowly, those started slipping too. First, she canceled one, then another. Then, she just stopped showing up. It became clear she had given up. Mark wasted no time. He filed to terminate her parental rights completely. No supervised visits. No connection at all. The court agreed. And with that, Laura lost everything. No kids. No home. No family. No support. Laura started bouncing between temporary housing and staying with acquaintances, but as her options ran out, she became more desperate. Some family members heard she was trying to find work, while others claimed she was still making excuses. Eventually, her calls for help went unanswered, and she slowly faded from everyone's lives. All she left behind was a trail of burned bridges and people who had finally seen her for who she really was. A year passed. No more drama, no more chaos, no more Laura. Daniel and I had fully cut ties with the toxic parts of his family. Anyone who had sided with Laura was gone, and honestly, life was better for it. We surrounded ourselves with people who actually supported us, friends, Daniel's parents who had finally seen the light, and Mark, who had stepped up in ways no one had expected. His kids were thriving. His oldest daughter had even started calling me her favorite aunt. Every time I saw them, they looked happier, healthier. No more walking on eggshells, no more fear of their mother's unpredictable moods. Mark had finalized everything. Laura's parental rights were officially terminated. He was the sole legal guardian now. And Laura? She was gone. At least until she resurfaced. One afternoon, I got a message from an old friend of hers. Apparently, Laura was still couch surfing, still struggling. She had popped up on Facebook again, posting the same sob stories, talking about how her evil family had abandoned her. The difference this time? No one was engaging. Not a single comment. Not a single word of sympathy. Her entire support system had dried up, and for the first time in years, she was truly alone. I read the message, then closed it. Despite everything, I felt a twinge of pity. But I had no desire to reconnect. She had made her choices. And now, she was living with them. It took time for Daniel and me to process everything. After months of healing and cutting toxic ties, we found ourselves reflecting on what we truly wanted for our future. We had once put our dreams of parenthood on hold, but now we realized that fostering was a path we had always considered. Slowly, we began looking into the process, determined to build our family on our own terms. It was something we had talked about before, but with all the chaos of Laura's drama, we had never actually taken the first step. This time we did. We started the application process. It was long. Interviews, home visits, paperwork, but for the first time in years, we felt hopeful. Then, one day, the call came. CPS. But not about Laura. A child needed a home. We met them that afternoon, and the second we saw them, we knew. This was the path we were meant to take all along. As I signed the paperwork, I thought about everything that had led to this moment. If I had taken Laura's baby, I would have been trapped in her toxicity forever. Instead, we had walked away. And now, Daniel, our new foster child, and I were starting fresh. For the first time in years, life wasn't just peaceful. It was exactly where it was meant to be.